want everybody, this is Keith Heineman over here. He's our secretary of Virginia Research. He may not be there. That's where he is to me on the Brady Bunch screen here. But Keith is our secretary, and we actually had a training session this week, so I could help this poor Luddite brother get on Zoom. Good to have you. I love working with the Muggles. It's fun to teach them IT. And Brother Steve is going to be our speaker today. Good to have him here early. So, Bill, what have you been up to?
Well, I just got back from the Kempsville breakfast, which was really nice. Got to see a lot of brethren and got to talk about a lot of things. Masonic, so planning, talking to Buddy Pay about planning a monthly, or not necessarily monthly, but a quarterly newsletter about, since I'm the DEO for the 56th district, about Masonic education relating to like finding like a worshipful master that had a successful year and what he did to make his year successful, and what junior or senior warden did to have a successful year. So I'm probably going to tag like West Latchford and some people outside the 56 districts. I don't want it to be just a 56 district thing. So I got some people in mind. I'm going to reach out to them later today about putting together topics that, are educational in manner, like planning years, worshipful masters, things like that. I don't just want to get the stuff that's already on the Grand Lodge website.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Good to see it. I'm working on putting a speakers bureau together, kind of starting with Hampton Roads, but making it available across the whole state, and just finding speakers like us who are willing to go visit lodges and provide educational talks, and kind of make it we need some kind of a clearinghouse so masters can reach out and say, hey, I need a speaker this date at this lodge, and we can help find them someone, because too many lodges, they don't know outside of their own lodge, who to ask, where to draw from. And we have several of us who enjoy giving presentations, so we want to
put me on that list.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm starting my next week. I'm starting my DEO talk, so my first one will be at Princess Anne 25, and this year's topics, and I'm going to kind of vary it a little bit, but talk about landmarks of Masonry in general, and then pick a few landmarks for each of the different lodges to talk about.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's still 9:55, still early. Well, we had a good crowd out the gate. We already have 8 people on here. That's always a good sign. It's hard to tell with these things. Y'all know that I try and sign in early, give everybody a chance to get in. And Keith was worried he'd be able to connect good, but he's in here. We got him here, but I always try and give people time to filter in, kind of get settled in a bit, and then after 10 o'clock, I start officially, and then bring on the speaker a little after that.
Yeah, just so you know, Jonathan Giles, they got DLC in the Norfolk area. I think they might be in the peninsula this morning.
Yep.
He wanted the link, so I sent him the link last night. He responded back this morning saying that if DLC ends at the prescribed time, he's going to try to join us.
Oh, good. What time did it start? Would it start like at 8?
I guess so. I'm not sure what time it was supposed to start on the peninsula this morning, but I'm assuming 8. So I'm assuming it goes to 8 to 10.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. We'll be happy to bring him in. People can always watch it on YouTube later.
Yeah.
So, Brother Rowe, good to have you here. Where you hail from?
Twin Falls, Idaho.
Oh, very good. I think, have you been with us before?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. Sorry if I don't remember. I mean, we started this over a year ago, and we had quite a few regulars, and then we stopped for a bit, so I can't always remember. I try and remember people when I see them. So, good to see everybody. We should have a good talk today. I've been looking forward to this. Steve's going to be talking about military lodges. So, let's see what else is going on. I know, we had the DLC last night. Did you attend that, Bill?
I did. I was being a DEO. I was expected to be there because meeting with Jonathan Giles, the Grand Provost, and then talking about the future of Masonic education. And have you heard the thing called Grand View?
I got an email from Fred about it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the new platform in which the Grand Lodges are going to post everything on. So based on what Jonathan Giles said last night, it's supposed to roll out in 90 days.
Okay, very cool.
So they got some brethren that's on a test platform right now, testing it out.
Yep, glad to see them entering the 20th century at least. We have a past Grand Master and his cat with us, Brother Buddy Dungan. Good to have you here, sir. Need to unmute, sir. Need to turn off mute. Lower right corner of or lower left corner of your screen, probably. Look for the little microphone.
How about now?
There you are. Very good.
Okay.
That's the first lesson. Teach you how to turn on your microphone.
Yeah.
Good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be
So far,
here.
that's 1, 2, counting me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 members of Research Lodge. I think that's a high watermark for us. We host this thing, but I have trouble getting my brothers to attend, so maybe it's paying off. That's great. Glad to have you here, sir. Brother Oliveros, good to have you with us again.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, and Brother Hughes, good to have you here as well. Good afternoon to you. You seem to be floating in a cloud with your background there. Brother Hughes looking down on us beneficently. Be careful, he will smite us if we have to. All right. Well, this is good. It's good to see some new people come in and join us, and very good. I don't know. I'm not up to vamping this morning. I don't know why. I'm a little slow going this morning. I don't know what it is, but so good to have everybody here. Brother Hughes, what's going on in your corner of the world, Masonically?
Well, I'll be going down to London this coming week. I've got 2 meetings. But in my part, the actual part of the world where my family home is, I'm no longer a member of any Masonic body.
Well, I hope you stayed in one somewhere. Yeah, you said you were going to be shedding some of those dues cards, but y'all don't have dues cards, but you know what I mean. Yeah, we have 12 people so far. That's a good crowd. It's just 10 o'clock. I'll give it another minute before I do the official rollout. Let me get my my URLs up here. Anybody got any announcements, anything you want to share with everybody while we're marking time here?
Louisiana.
Go ahead, Paul.
Louisiana uses Grandview.
Oh, how's it work for y'all?
Works good. And they can turn off, depending on your position in Lodge, they can enable certain things on your account. Like as a Warden Master, I can see the roster. The Secretary has access to just about everything, even stuff I don't have. As you progress through the degrees, there's material that appears as it's available for you, study material. And then after your master's, after you're raised to your master's, the Handbook of Masonic Law in PDF form appears. So there's different things I do. There's the ability to upload minutes, but we haven't started doing that yet. I'd like to get to that point.
I mentioned the DLC, that's the District Leadership Conference. That's what we have annually here in Virginia around this time, where the officers of each lodge get to meet. There's a group, you get to meet with several people from the Grand Lodge. If I'm not mistaken, Bill, it's been a minute since I've been, but is it slot or DLC where you meet with your counterpart?
It's the divisional leadership conference where
Right.
they had the Grand Master and his elected and appointed officers.
Right.
So you'll have a breakout session with the Grand Master for the current masters,
Right.
and then the senior wardens breakout with the deputy Grand Master. So that's the DOC is the breakout session. You'll have one
Right.
for the treasurer, one for the secretary.
Right. So you assuming there's not a jump in either your lodge line or the Grand Lodge line, you meet your counterparts. You can be like junior deacon and meet the grand senior deacon who will be Grand Master of the year, your master, assuming you progress orderly. I remember there was one time I coordinated with the judge, and another time I went, and whoever the guy was, he jumped ahead a year. So he was master before I was, and all that. But it's a great idea because you actually get to spend time with the guy who will be Grand Master of the year that you're master. And it's a good way to share information. So we just had that last night in our District 35 for my home lodge. And then this morning in Newport News. Okay, after an appropriate pause. Good morning, everyone. I need to leave blanks so I can edit properly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Douglas. I'd like to welcome you all. It's 10:03 here on the East Coast. This is Virginia Research Lodge number 1777's unstated meeting. I have put some chats in some links in the chat for you. First one is our Facebook page. If you're not already a member of our group, please join us. We share our research papers there, and we have announcements of upcoming Masonic events online you can attend. Next is a link to our website where you can find all of our papers that have been published. Next is our YouTube channel, which is where I post these unstated meetings as well as other relevant things as they come up. We have more people coming in. That's good. And then finally, my email address. We have Virginia Research Lodge is 70 years old or so. We have quite a few research papers we've delivered over the years, and we are in the slow process of digitizing them and making them available to any Mason who is interested. They're available on our website. They are posted weekly on our Facebook page group, and at the same time, I'm emailing them to a list of those who are interested. It's absolutely free. If you're not already on the email list, you can connect to me through Facebook or via email. I'll be happy to add you to the list. We also, in that email, promote these unstated meetings. And apparently I sent an email out recently to help explain the confusion because some people didn't understand because we mentioned several things. The paper that we provide is from the past. It's from like the 1980s or the 2000s, whatever year it happens to be. That's just the paper I'm sending in the email. The unstated meeting, when I have one coming up and I provide a link to it, is a totally different topic. And there are some people who thought that I give you the paper and then we're talking about that paper at the meeting. That's not the case. I tried to explain that in email, but I'll explain it again here. So hopefully it gets through. Two different things going on. There's the email that's the paper that's in the email that someone gave many years ago that we're cycling through and putting out there for you to consume. And in addition to that, there's our unstated meeting where we will have a research paper or some other presentation or a panel discussion. Could be usually a totally different subject altogether from the paper that's in the email. So I'm sorry if that's confusing to some. Someone said, I'm sorry, I can't be there Saturday to talk about this paper. It's like, well, we won't be talking about that paper. We'll be talking about military lodges. So I understand it's confusing. I sent out an email specifically. I'm always asking for feedback from you all because as much as I'm a tech savvy guy and I know the means to work the intertubes and get you this information. I don't always, I'm trying to find the most efficient way and the clearest way to communicate with you all. I asked if people would rather get a separate email just for the meetings, or if they want the emails for the papers separate. I never really got a clear answer. So what I'm currently doing is I will send a paper every single week. If we have an upcoming regular meeting in person or an unstated meeting here in Zoom, I will announce that at the bottom of the email, and I'll say in the first line of the email, hey, we have an upcoming meeting, scroll to the bottom. Because people, for some reason, saw the paper and they didn't bother to scroll to the bottom of the email to see the links, and they're asking me, when do I get notified about the meeting? So I put a note at the top telling you there's a meeting, and then it's after the standard blurb about the paper. In addition, I'm sending out emails on Thursday or Friday, the week of the meeting, to remind you, yes, there's a meeting this Saturday. So I'm doing my best to share with you all. Inevitably, there's some confusion still, but I'm doing my very best to share with you all and make sure everybody knows about things. And I'm not spamming you 50 times a week, because I know nobody wants. I don't want people starting to unsubscribe because I'm spamming you too often. I'd like to welcome everybody else joining us. Brother Kurt, Brother Joyner, good to see you. You move the camera around. I was like Brother Joyner's bedroom because he reflects the lodge in his bedroom. He has the deacon's staffs over his bed, so we always enjoy seeing that. Brother Day, good to have you back with us. Brother Adams, coming to us from Canada. Good to see you again. Brother Guzman, Brother Taggett. Good to have you all. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and ask Brother Guzman and Brother Taggett if you want to unmute and say hi, since we don't see you.
Yes, good morning. My name is Rodrigo Guzman. I'm from Liberty Lodge number 31 in Liberty, Missouri. Glad to be here.
Good to have you here. Can't hear you, Brother Taggett. You're not muted, but I can't hear you. Brother Duggan brought his cat. Brother Taggett brought his bird.
There we go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my little, cockatiel. Now you can hear me.
That's quite all right.
Sorry, it was on my headphones and I don't have them on right now.
I understand.
Yes. Brother Taggett, I'm Worshipful Master of Temecula, California.
Excellent.
And so nice to be here. Thank you. I just happened to see it and, it was like, oh, wow, I am up early enough.
That's excellent. I appreciate you getting up early for our sake. 10 o'clock is the best time we found overall to have people tune in. We have a lot of European brothers who are very active, and it's early afternoon for them. So it works out well for almost everybody, except maybe like Guam or Hawaii. Probably it's a little hard for you all to attend and understand. Brother Adamson, saw you tune back in. Good to have you with us. Good to be here. Good to have you. And now, we have a bird, we have a cat. If I turned off my background, this is Ocean View Lodge here. Sam Welty painted this wonderful murals we have in our lodge room. If I turn them off, you'll probably see a dog and a pig stroll through the office from time to time. But, they will come by and say hello. That will be General Grievous, my bee-bull, and Ham Solo, my pot-bellied pig. So you can see what kind of shows I'm into. All right, so good to have everybody here. It's 10 after. We have, how many we got here? 18 people in. That's very good. Okay, always trying new things here, seeing what works, what doesn't work. So at this time, I'm going to ask a question, and I would like everyone in the room to respond. I'll go ahead and call on you, and you just give me your response. You can be brief, but I want to try to do things differently. I'm going to pose a different question at each meeting and just kind of get some feedback, get some discussion. So whatever's on your mind, you agree, disagree, just kind of want your thoughts. Don't go on it at great length, but I think we're spending about 10 minutes doing this. And I'm going to cut this snippet out and publish it separately on YouTube, because I'm trying to find shorter snippets to draw people in, because not everybody's going to watch 2 hours of our meetings. So here is the question. You have multiple candidates ready to receive the degrees. Do you prefer, this is your own choice, your own opinion, not what necessarily what your lodge does, but you can elaborate if your lodge has a policy. Option one, you bring in as many candidates as possible on the same night to save time and get them into the lodge faster. Or option two, every candidate deserves to have his own special night, and you only initiate one per evening. Steve, we'll start with you.
I would prefer having 2 or 3 go through. That's just my personal opinion. It's easier to control and the night is not as long, but that's just my personal opinion.
Brother Keith.
I believe we ought to do just one at a time. It's a special event for that candidate, and he deserves to be the sole recipient of the degree.
Very good. Brother Paul.
For the first degree, we've done up to 3. The disadvantage of that is the 2 of them are waiting for each one to finish. And so 3's are kind of our limit on that, but usually we haven't had a lot. We did do a master's degree with 2, and that was because one was military and was being deployed outside the state, so we had to. It was a rush one. So, but for the second and third degree, I think it's good to have just one.
Brother Brian.
One at a time, I think, definitely. Make it special, unless of course they're family or friends, in which case it might be more special if they do it together.
If you have 2 that are related to each other in some way, that's a good one. I had not considered that. Okay. Brother David. Have we heard from David yet? I think we did.
Yes, I did. Hello.
Okay.
Yes, I kind of like what Brother Paul said about for the first degree, you could have multiple people, but I think after that, I think you should narrow it down, and I think particularly the third degree should be individual.
Okay. Brother Peterson.
My preference when I was working for master was one at a time, because I think it should be a special night, unless like Vince previously said that it's a family member that's coming in together, like 2 brothers, something like that. And then especially the Master Masons, it should be it's a special night. I don't think we want to take that opportunity away from the brother to be raised, and that's a special night too. So my preference is 1 for the entered apprentice, 1 for the Master Mason, unless there's some special circumstances that require like a military member. But I know in our lodge, depending on the number of candidates, 3 was the max that we have done on the entered apprentice at one night.
Brother Bernie.
I prefer one at a time.
Very good.
I feel that the candidate deserves the full attention. We did 2 last night in the lodge, and the second candidate, he wasn't conducted properly, and it just takes away from it, I think. So I'm definitely opposed to it. I think that if you, insofar as the time, the important thing is to get started on time. And you can have your candidate ready to come in as soon as your lodge is open. The stewards go ahead and be preparing him while you open it. And it doesn't take that long to do that and to confer the degree. So we were finished last night with the lecture. We were through about 20 minutes after 8. So we could have run that second candidate individually and been out of there by 9 o'clock, which I feel is still a reasonable hour. So there again, I'm opposed to that multiple candidate procedure.
Thank you. Brother Hughes.
Oh, yeah, one at a time. Any more it takes to gloss off it. It's only going to happen 2 months ever. So
Exactly.
It's got to be very special.
I'm trying not to influence the panel here, but I totally agree. You may conduct 100 degrees in your lifetime, but that candidate only gets to receive it once, and it should be special. All right, Brother Kurt.
I would say I would agree with only one at a time on the fellow craft and the Master Mason. There may be some advantage to having more than one on the entered apprentice, and that those guys come in and have that closer bond amongst themselves. I don't know for a fact that happens, but that might help as far as having some interest and having a fellow brother that you're closer to, coming back again. But again, I'm new to this, so haven't totally seen a lot of what works the best.
Brother Joyner. Need to unmute. That's the most eloquent you've ever been, Mike.
Well, thank you. Normally, because when the thing is, these degrees are divided into first and second half. All first halves, I think, should be done individually, because that is an individual moment, particularly initiation and going into the third degree. But I have seen times, I think, but I agree with the brother that said that, when you hit the second half, when you brought them in the second half, for the second half, of the first and second degrees, I think that is can be a bonding experience between the two brothers for that. So that, when you're doing the second half of the first or second degree, primarily the lecture, that can be a great experience of putting two brothers together because they have a sharing there. But I think the Master Masons should definitely be all the way through individually, on that. That's my opinion. But I've seen some nice bonding on the first half of the EA and the fellow craft, doing them individually, but taking them second half together for that part.
I would definitely say every time I've seen people do when we do the Entered Apprentice, I've seen as much as 3 in one evening. We always do the lecture with all 3. I don't see any advantage in separating those out, but definitely the individual parts. But I don't want to influence everybody. So, Brother Rowe.
Typically, the individually, and unless you have, 2 at once, otherwise it just makes too long an evening for everyone.
Brother Taggart?
They're only on the first 2 degrees.
Yes, I also highly am for the individual degrees, although I will tell you that thanks to COVID, we had to combine a lot of degrees this past year.
And that is an exception. I'll give you that. That was an exception.
So with that exception, but a lot of the brothers, to be honest, after they got their first degree together, they requested having their second degree together.
Really?
And that's because last year and the next year that I'm moving forward to, I get installed in another 8 hours or so. But we only do 1 degree a month. We used to do 1 every single week, so there was always opportunity for brothers to move. But once we told them that it's now a slow path and so many requirements are put on them before they can be moved to the next degree, they see that opportunity to be raised. Well, not raised. We don't do more than 1 raising in a day, but here in California, we do have ritual that combines the first degree or second degree to allow them to do that together. And so brothers have personally requested it, although I believe in the individual. You paid your own individual money, you should get your own individual experience.
Brother Robert, good to have you with us, sir.
Good to be here.
What's
I
your
would
take?
say I can hear from both sides, but I think like everyone's saying, most everybody's saying is if it's your degree, you want to be able to understand it. The Entered Apprentice, maybe you could do 1 in 1 and then do the lectures, what you said about for both Entered Apprentice and Fellowcraft. Now, as for the Master Mason, I definitely say that it needs to be 1 individual.
And just to be clear, I'm not talking about even having multiple going through at the same time. I'm talking about 1 per night, period. You show up, we're gonna initiate Brother Robert, period. Now, I admittedly, in the cases where my lodge has done this, they do, if they have 2 candidates, they'll initiate Keith, and then Keith gets dressed, he'll come back in, and we'll bring in Robert, initiate him, and Keith gets to at least watch Robert, and then both Keith and Robert will sit there for the lecture. I think that's the best you can do with the situation. But again, my opinion overall is just 1 per night. You show up, it's Keith's night. It's all going to be about Keith. He's the only one there. And then Robert is another night. All right. But again, I've tried I've tried to hold back and not express my own opinion. I want to get everybody to get some there, but I have had some good arguments for the other way, and I appreciate it. Let me get through everybody, give everybody a chance. Brother Aday. I don't want to run too long on this segment, but want to make sure everybody has a chance to say something. Brother Aday, good to have you with us. If you want to unmute and comment, he may be away. Okay. Brother London, I don't think we've heard from you yet, John. John, are you there? You want to offer your opinion?
Okay.
Hey.
Okay, hopefully I'm unmuted.
Yes.
I think that the 1 per night is ideal. On the other hand, I'd like to point out you don't want to keep the candidate waiting too long, and you don't want to overstress your degree team. So potentially you may want to go ahead and go with multiples to reduce the stress on the system.
Thank you. Brother Oliveris.
So this, there's been a lot of experience here and perspective, and I just want to share my perspective. And
go ahead.
When I went through, I actually went through in a group. It was 4 of us, and I will say that I think this is a great question, because I think about when I went through the military training. I built a relationship with those guys and still talk to them to this day. And I can say about the same about my EA all the way to the Master Mason degree. I still have a good relationship with two out of the other 4 gentlemen, and I think it also alleviates the constraints that it could create on the lodge, putting on 4 or 5 degrees in a matter of a few weeks and things like that. And I will add that when I did it, each candidate went through their own. They were brought in individually, and we kind of went separate, but at the same time, if it makes any sense. But I think I think ideally, individually is good, but if you have to consider everyone and their time and also what you get out of it with building those bonds, I think doing it as a group is not such a bad thing.
All right, thank you. Brother Guzman. Brother Guzman, you still with us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was having a little difficulty unmuting. I agree with just about everybody that had said that have both opinions. However, in my opinion, this is an individual journey that we all take for betterment and self-improvement. I am of the belief that that night, especially for the enter apprentice, should be the special night. That is the night that he is coming into our fraternity, and he is the special one that night. Therefore, I believe in individual degrees, even for the other degrees, because as we progress and as we move on, that night is the night that the candidate, whether he is an enter apprentice or going into the fellowcraft or master mason degree, should be a special night for him. All the bonding that comes on that I heard some brethren talk about from getting initiated together, that bonding will develop as you are part of the lodge. So that special bonding, even though I understand it, I don't think it is an intricate part of that. As I said before, I think this is an individual journey that we all take to better ourselves. So that's my position on that.
Thank you. Brother Adamson. Anything to add?
As long as the candidates, have been or the applicants have been vetted and all the paperwork and procedures have been followed, get it done as quick as you can. So do 2, do 3, just, by hook or by crook, get them in, get them through, because you don't want to leave them waiting. I think leaving them waiting is worse than having multiple degrees.
Brother Aday. Brother Aday, I don't think I've heard from you yet today. Can you unmute? He may be away from his computer. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone. We had some good points all the way around. I will say this. I think we've kind of covered both sides, but just for your consideration, the arguments I've heard in favor of doing multiple candidates, and COVID doesn't count. We all get backlog because of COVID, and I understand trying to get rid of the backlog, but under normal circumstances, if you have 2 or 3, even 4 candidates going through the pipeline, the argument is, well, if we do several on one night, we can hurry up and get them into the lodge. But just my take on it, my lodge meets on the second Friday. That's our stated. The other Fridays are for work nights. I have seen us in a rush do a meeting on a Wednesday or a meeting on a Saturday just to get the guys in the door. And I look at it this way. If my lodge had 3 or 4 candidates, and assuming by the time you got through all of them for the EA, the first one's ready to take his fellowcraft, right? And then Master Mason, and the guys are progressing. You could spend every Friday from the beginning of the year, maybe through June or longer, you do an EA, and then you have your stated. Then you do another EA, and the first EA gets to watch. And then you do another EA, and those 2 get to watch. And then you do another EA, and those 3 get to watch. Meanwhile, they're learning their catechism. Maybe they're working together as a group and all working on their catechism together with one coach. There's your bonding. By the time the first candidate is ready, he comes back and does his fellowcraft. The other 3 can show up and watch him give his catechism so they know what it's like and they can see it. They can be there for the entered apprentice degree, and then they can hang out for a bit, maybe do a dinner before, and they can wait for the degree over, and then you all can spend time. But as each candidate comes up, the other ones can come watch him do his catechism, and then each one gets to watch the next fellowcraft once they've received it on to the masters. So you're talking about every Friday that's not a stated, you're doing a degree and you're having someone stand their catechism. Or you may even turn it around if a guy's fast enough. You may open up an entered apprentice degree, initiate that candidate. After he's initiated, before you close, you have the guy stand his catechism that night, and the newly initiated brother gets to see someone else do their catechism that night. And that way you don't have to open up an EA the next week when you do his fellowcraft. But here's the thing. If you're meeting every single Friday, everybody gets a chance to do their ritual. Every single officer gets multiple opportunities to rehearse his part, to deliver his part. You can have more than one person sit in the east to be the master because you have ample opportunity for someone else, the senior warden, the junior warden, to step up and sit in the east for the EA or the fellowcraft. You can have someone who wants to be a deacon who isn't in that position yet, fill in and be a deacon in 1 or more degrees. If your lodge is meeting every single Friday and you're working and you're actually moving forward and working on a new candidate every single week, and everyone gets a chance to do their part multiple times as an officer, what's wrong with that? I mean, to me, that's a fully functioning lodge. You're working every week, and there's always something going on. There's always an opportunity for visitors to come and watch the degrees, for other lodges to bring their EAs to watch the degrees, and you're firing on all cylinders. To me, in my mind, that's what a lodge should be doing. You're a healthy, growing, vibrant lodge, and you're working all the time, and everybody gets a chance to perform. I honestly, if you compare that to, well, my lodge is going to meet in January, we're going to have our stated, and then we're going to do 3 EAs. And then we're going to have a stated, and then we're going to have a stated, and in March, we're going to do 3 fellowcrafts, and then we're going to have a stated, and a stated, and a stated, and a stated. Oh, and maybe by August, we do a Master Mason's degree. So you're only doing 3 degrees in a year, 3 degree nights, and everybody comes in all at once. I'm sorry, I'd much rather be in the lodge that's working every single week. And by the way, if you miss a week, if your senior deacon can't be there, someone else can fill in for that degree. If you were doing all your things at once, you have to make sure that every single member is available. So I just think it's a more active lodge that's working it week in, week out than one that saves up all their candidates to do it once. But that's just my opinion. I appreciate everybody's input. That was a good little segment. I can cut that out by itself. I want to welcome Brother Clark, who joined us. Good to have you with us, sir. Thank you for being here. Okay, it is now 10:30, so this has gone well. I hope you all enjoyed that. I think we should have that segment of just asking a question and getting feedback. Getting feedback from all of you and get everyone involved in the discussion here instead of you just tuning in and just watching the speaker and all that. Let me look at the chat real quick. Yeah, well, you do need to have more than just degrees, Brother Taggart. You do need to have Masonic education. I completely agree. But that gets into a much, there you hear my pig in the background. And Brother Paul says they have 2 stateds a month. That's interesting. We only have 1 in Virginia. I think that's typical. We also don't typically do degree nights on our stateds. Very few lodges have to do that. Most of the time we have them on separate nights. But I have taken away enough time from our speaker, but I hope everybody enjoyed that. I would like to welcome our speaker, Brother Steven Teeft, and he's going to go ahead and say what lodge he belongs to and all like that, because I don't have his bio. Do you have a light or something you want to illuminate a little bit? You're a little in the dark there.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm trying to. It is very bright outside, and
I understand.
I'm trying to find it where I don't blind everybody or
I
look
understand.
like I'm a saint in the background.
Right. Maybe you were better where you were. I'm sorry. That's good. That's good right there. Okay, don't move. All right. Brother Teeft, take it away.
Greetings, brothers. My name is Brother Steve Teeft. I'm a member of the Charles W. Cushman Lodge, 870.
Sorry, Steve. I was muting other people. I muted you. I'm sorry.
Okay, take 2.
It moves around.
My name is Brother Steve Teeft. I'm a member of the Charles W. Cushman Lodge, 879 in Cheektowaga, New York. That's a suburb of Buffalo. I am a military historian and director of the only Civil War museum in New York State, which is called the Echoes Through Time Learning Center and Civil War Museum, located just south of Buffalo in Springville, New York. I'm a member of the Western New York Lodge of Research and a petitioning member of the Civil War Lodge of Research. I have several sites up here on Facebook. I write and promote various famous Freemason biographies and stories, including a new Facebook site I started a little over a year ago called the American Military Freemasons. I put up a posting every other day. Let's see, as well as a number of other sites. My museum site, the Echoes Through Time Museum Group. We have local postings or historical postings just about every day.
Steve, when you're finished, please put the URLs in the chat for everybody. And
absolutely.
I forgot to ask, do you have a presentation? Do you need the screen, or are you just going to be talking?
I'm just going to go and talk.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Let's see. I'm a camp commander for the Chaplain PG Cook Camp 223 of the Sons of Union Veterans. I'm a former camp commander for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And a couple other things that I go out and run. So I stay pretty active, but we'll get to our basis of our little talk. I always find it amazing that we have so many Freemasons throughout history that influenced our American history, especially those who had served in our U.S. military through the ages. We can document American military Freemasons in every American conflict. We could document some type of presence or military lodge throughout our existence. So that's really impressive. I have to go and point out, I'm not an authority on American military lodges. My experience and expertise is I teach American military history, write and research topics on American military Freemasons, Freemason biographies, and being a Civil War historian. So that's my little area, my little thing I'd like to point out to everybody. So on to our talk. American military lodges and American military Freemasons through the ages. Some of our earliest patriots we'll start with the American Revolution in this time period. Signers of our Declaration of Independence. There were 56 signers on the Declaration of Independence. Out of those signers, there were approximately 16 Freemasons that we can document. Signers of our U.S. Constitution, there were 39 signers, and approximately 28 of those signers were Freemasons. Some of our American military patriots of our American Revolution, we all know George Washington. Some of our lesser ones I enjoy, Henry Knox, Light Horse Harry Lee, Ethan Allen, John Paul Jones. Some of our allies, I can say Lafayette, and hate to say it, and so many lodges will go and take him off his rolls, but Benedict Arnold, and of course a number of British Army officers, including Major John Andre, with his association with Benedict Arnold. General Washington and his staff. The majority of George Washington's officers in the Continental Army, the majority of them were Freemasons. Military lodges during our American Revolution, there were over 20 military lodges formed. There were military lodges on both the British and American armies, which both of their lodges were granted from the Grand Lodge of England, Ireland, or Scotland. The first military lodges weren't issued in the American colonies. They were issued by Jeremy Gridley, a provisional Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of England, betrothed in Boston to his brother Richard Gridley in May of 1756 for the lodges, or for the lodge in the 28th British Foot. From the beginning, other warrants were issued. During 1762, a Colonel Ingersoll for a military lodge at Crown Point, 1764 from the Grand Lodge of New York, and as time went on, others had followed. By 1776, at the time of the American Revolution, there were 10 military lodges working in the Continental Army. There were at least 2 instances during our American Revolution in which the Americans had captured some British lodge furniture, warrants, and jewels. In both cases, there are records and documentation of the listed items being restored to their owners by the honor of a guard under a flag of truce. So we still upheld our brotherhood during those early days of our American history. During the War of 1812, there were only 1 documented military lodge that I found to have been established. That was Army Lodge number 24 over in Fort Meigs, Ohio. Even though that we had a number of Freemasons that had served, again, on either side. Some of our more common ones that I had written about: Winfield Scott, who was merely a colonel during the time period, Jacob Brown, Moses Dodge, and John Mad Jack Percival. They all have interesting personalities. Moving on, our U.S. expansion, as we went westward, you all probably heard stories of Lewis and Clark, Captain Meriwether Lewis and Captain William Clark, as they went out west. We have lots of explorers in our nation's history that I'm not going to get into right now. Texas independence. During our annexation of Mexico, the Mexican territory, all those things around the Texas Republic. During the Texas Revolution, many of its main organizers for the Texas Republic were Freemasons. Stephen Austin, Sam Houston, William Travis, Davy Crockett, James Bowie, and believe it or not, even Santa Anna. There were lots of rumors what had happened at the final 13th day of the Alamo for the siege, that what had transpired between Davy Crockett and Santa Anna. Even though that they're rumors, we don't really know what happened other than the end result. So, but it was their association during that time period that really bonded those men, especially there at the Alamo, or in the case of the Texas independence. The following conflict, the Mexican War, there were 12 known Army lodges that were formed. 2 had followed the Army to Mexico, one of which came from my native state of Virginia. All of these lodges worked under a dispensation, and none of them were ever chartered per se following the conflict. Again, lots of veterans of the Mexican War. A lot of them I had written about over the past couple of years. And then, of course, my specialty with the Civil War. The documentation is not totally clear, but it is known that well over 200 Army lodges were formed between both the North and the South during our war between the states, which approximately 98 were authorized by the Union Army, and approximately 153-ish were authorized in the Confederacy. During the war between the states, traveling lodges or military lodges were organized or held regular meetings, initiated new members, and provided for the wants and needs for less fortunate soldiers and civilians, whether that they were members or not. They really took care of their communities, their soldiers, no matter where that they were located. Within those regiments where there were traveling lodges, were not existed or not permitted, Freemasons messed together, they tended together. Lots of evidence had shown that they made a very close association within the military organization that they hung out with. Throughout Freemasonry, the need or to get permission from their Grand Lodge to form a regimental lodge, there was a process that had to be done. But once granted, the Freemasons or the Masonic soldier did very little without their fellow brothers in the craft. Military lodges had to meet a certain requirement before it could be formally operated. First, it must have a charter or a warrant, which is a license from a higher Masonic authority empowering it to conduct business, initiate new members, and perform ritual work. Without a charter, granted outright or provisional under a dispensation, better known as a UD lodge in Masonic circles, the lodge would not be recognized. In Masonic terms, the lodge would be clandestine. Let's see, the Masons would regularly approve lodges which would be prohibited from interacting with it. So they had a code of conduct. In addition to the lodge charter, a lodge would have a volume of sacred laws, which inevitably during the 1860s would have been the Holy Bible. Finally, a lodge would be required some working tools, square and compasses, some noted objects of ritual significance that we would basically wear today at our stated communications, along with a quorum of a master mason present to conduct business. If all three requirements were met in a military or an army lodge, a traveling lodge, whatever you care to call it, then it would be granted and could be formed. There is no question that the Civil War had killed thousands of Freemasons. The lodges' timely work were disrupted, between normal operations of their home lodges. They did their best to kind of get by. In the great number of the physical lodges, both north, south, east, west, they were subjected to harm, especially by non-Masons, people that did not like the Freemasons. Looting occurred, but there were some great accounts out there about lodge halls that were protected by the opposing side and posted guard to make sure that they weren't looted. There's just dozens of these accounts, which I always find amazing. Masonic ties were often seen on the battlefield, the military camps, as well as the POW camps. During the Battle of Gettysburg, it was said that an accurate number of Freemasons is almost impossible to know. I picked the Battle of Gettysburg because it's the most documented, where over 160,000 Americans from both sides were present during the battle or the campaign. It is guesstimated, not estimated, it's guesstimated that perhaps 1 out of every 7 soldiers during the Battle of Gettysburg was a Freemason. Some 51,000 men from both sides became casualties. A little more than 31% of that number, out of that number, 11% were believed to have been Freemasons. It was noted in Sheldon Munn's book on Freemasons at Gettysburg, that approximately 17,930 men were said to have belonged to our Masonic fraternity. Excuse me, Masonic fraternity. These are just some rough numbers from military and regimental lodges that I come across in Virginia. There were some 26 military lodges or regimental lodges. North Carolina had 6. Texas, between 33 and say 50. Arkansas had some 16. Mississippi, 29. Let's see. Massachusetts had somewhere around 100. Indiana had, let's see, 38. New York had 9, and 2 of the largest ones was the first New York Engineers. They showed their face often as much as possible in showing off their symbols often, especially around Petersburg. The National Zouave Lodge is probably the most well-known for New York State. The 10th New York Zouaves, they had such a large membership. Military cadets during the Civil War years, the West Point Lodge, still active today. Kind of cross between a military lodge and lodge for that were kind of cadet oriented, where even the post-war years, the cadets still stayed in touch. VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, about 1/4 of the known cadets during the Civil War years between 1850 and 1860s were that had attended VMI were Freemasons. And the Citadel, the South Carolina Military Academy, there in Charleston, had quite a large number of cadets. We don't have an exact number, but they had their own association. Just briefly, some of our known Civil War officers, and I kind of break it down to just officers because they are the most well-known. John C. Breckinridge, Felix Zelikofer, John B. Gordon, Henry Heath. These are mostly all from the Gettysburg campaign. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, William Barkdale, Daniel Butterfield, James Kemper, George E. Pickett, John M. Bowden, William Scott Hancock, Lou Armistead, which is featured with that beautiful memorial over at the National Cemetery at Gettysburg, brother to brother. My own lodge, the Charles W. Cushman Lodge in Cheektowaga, is named after a former Civil War veteran, a drummer boy from Illinois that became much later, about 1906, the Grand Master of New York State. The Spanish-American War. I can only find 2 Army lodges that were known to have been found or founded or formed during the Spanish-American War. One was from Kentucky, and the other one, of all places, North Dakota. Although California granted 3 dispensations to form lodges in the Philippines, they would later become part of the Grand Lodge of the Philippines. World War One. During this period, World War One saw a huge outpouring of patriotism with Freemasons at the forefront. The Grand Lodges wanted to help our military personnel, both at home and overseas. However, the federal government would not deal with the 49 Grand Lodges. They all worked independently. They demanded communications with only one central organization. So it caused some friction there. So in 1919, the Masonic Service Association of the United States was formed, which formed the Masonic Information Center in 1993. In World War One, saw only a few military lodges that actually were granted dispensations. Only 3 were granted for work within the United States. 9 more were granted for work in France and Germany during our post-war occupation. There were also 4 dispensations issued, but never really followed through. By this time, there were only 17 Grand Lodges, which favored military lodges, Virginia being one of them, while there was a equal number which opposed such lodges, with 15 additional Grand Lodges whose attitude was borderline. So trying to follow the history of military lodges is a quagmire sometimes. World War II. During the years of World War II, there were no official military lodges from the Grand Lodge in the United States. There were numerous requests for lodges to be formed, but none were officially granted. It is worth mentioning that from the United Grand Lodge of England in 1942, that there was a list of military lodges that showed 2 from England, 5 from Ireland. And after the close of the war, several temporary warrants were issued among the occupation forces in Germany. These temporary lodges were not military lodges, but they did not move with their units per se. They stayed in one location and they were temporarily established. In May 1947, the Grand Lodge of Connecticut issued a dispensation for an American lodge at Surgut, Germany, and I probably killed that name. That lodge existed for 9 years and then merged with the Forget-Me-Not Lodge 896 in Heilbronn, Germany. From that grew Freemason in Germany in the post-war years, since during World War II, Germany basically outlawed Freemasonry in their country and hunted Freemasons down. I'm going to kind of stop there. Our more modern history, Korea, Vietnam, there's not a whole lot that I have found officially. Our brothers met in army camps throughout both theaters of conflicts, but nothing really official I could go and report on. Persian Gulf and Afghanistan. The Grand Lodge of Nebraska developed a lodge-in-a-box program similar to the 18th century British Army to enable Masons to be practicing in Iraq and Afghanistan. it is a interesting concept. It got a little bit of feedback and pushback on it from many of our Grand Lodges, and many of those programs were shelved. A side note, Grand Lodges in Canada and Germany did issue dispensations for lodges in both Iraq and Afghanistan. One of our more noted Iraq War, Afghanistan generalship, who had passed away just a few years ago, General Norman Schwarzkopf. So it kind of gives you a nice overview of military lodges through the ages, and try to keep it brief. There's just so much information out there, and I enjoy writing about the soldiers that you seldom hear about. You always hear about the generals, the officership. You seldom hear about the general soldier, and that's what I always try to bring to the forefront. So there you have it, guys. If you have any questions, shoot them on out, and I hope that you enjoyed a nice brief overview of our American Freemasons and military lodges.
Thank you, Brother Teeft. I do appreciate that. Question. So the last time we actually had military lodges that were assigned to military units, that was World War I?
Correct.
I'd have to, okay, so World War II, it didn't come together.
Correct.
Okay. I would think if I wanted to speculate, because of the draft and prior to World War II, and I'm far from a military expert, even though I was in myself. Prior to World War II, you had military units that had cohesion. They've been together for a long time. They move from place to place as a unit, whereas we started to get to the point where we established permanent bases here in the U.S. A unit would be assigned to Fort Bragg and stay at Fort Bragg forever and ever. Plus, you had a lot of ramping up of a whole lot of draftees and a whole bunch of people being brought in at once to swell the ranks. You kind of diluted the unit cohesion you had during the war. It's kind of like all the cohesion formed while they were deployed. Is that an accurate way of looking at it? Or
absolutely. And a lot of our existing military camps here in the United States still existing today, like Fort Riley, Kansas, they still have a form of military lodge or a lodge that's at that post today. And those carry a couple of generations of history there.
But is it?
And I find that amazing.
It's associated with a specific unit or with the camp?
I think that it's associated, from what I gather, that it's associated with like Fort Riley, Kansas is home of the Big Red One, the 1st Infantry Division.
Right.
So it's attached to like that of men from the 1st Infantry right there at Fort Bragg or Fort Riley.
Right.
And you'll see this a lot in our existing camps here in the United States for our military post. So they're around. They're just not always considered a military post, but a lodge that is there within the
like I said,
of those lodges.
We're a lot less mobile. I mean, if we can all imagine, if you're assigned to the 174th Regimental Foot, whatever, you move from place to place. Your whole unit constantly moves. You have no permanent home. So it made more sense that a lodge would be formed among those members who spend several years together, but they go from place to place. If I was stationed here in Norfolk, if I was stationed at Camp Lejeune I could go out to town and find a Masonic lodge that I could be active in because I'm staying put. I'm at Lejeune. And when Marines know, once you're at Lejeune, you never go anywhere else. But that's where you are. There wasn't, you met the need because you could go out in town and find a military lodge to be active in or a Masonic lodge to be active in as a Mason. This was from a time when your entire life was with this traveling camp of military people and you went from here to there. So the idea of forming a lodge that you simply carried with you from place to place made more sense. So it was kind of a bygone idea. Brother Oliveris had a comment about a Civil War era lodge in Florida. And then if anyone else has questions.
So we actually, when I was in station in Florida, the Grand Lodge of Florida had an event where it was mainly our region, and it was held at a fort called Fort Clinch, where the Confederate and Union soldiers would come together, and they would just, have fellowship. And it was also, according to the historian on site, they would have moments where, it was a Union fort, so Confederate soldiers that were Masons were captured or injured. They would be treated they weren't treated as your normal POWs would be treated or anything like that. So it was, and so we had we sat, they closed the lodge, well, they closed the fort, and they opened it, and we were able to actually do a degree there in the sunset in open air, but it was closed, so no one else can see it. And it was a pretty cool experience, and it just showed the strength of the fraternity and the brotherhood.
Very cool. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, brother Lewis, you had a question?
Yes, I have a statement and a question. So, I don't know who on this in this Zoom meeting might be familiar. Are you all familiar with? We have a Masonic appendant body that, with us no longer having what would be considered a true military lodge, but is an organization that was created over 100 years ago, specifically for Freemasons that are currently or have previously served in the 8 uniform military, uniformed services here in the United States. And this body is in many ways is kind of taken over what the role of the original military lodges were. And I'm just wondering if any of you all are familiar with it.
Well, you didn't say the name, the National Sojourners. Is that what you're referring to?
National Sojourners.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
I wasn't sure if you were looking for the name or not. I was waiting for you to say.
No, actually, I'm involved at the national level. I actually help form new chapters, and I revitalize our existing chapters. And I thought I would share a little information and maybe expose some of the folks that join this meeting. So much of this history that was discussed on in the Zoom presentation is linked to things that led up to the creation of that organization as well. And the organization, we've got just a little under 200 chapters here domestically and a couple of foreign chapters. And where there weren't military lodges, for example, that were formed during the Vietnam War, there were actually some chapters that were sojourner chapters, if you want to consider that, that were rooted in boots on the ground on foreign soil. So there is some correlation there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been familiar with the Sojourners. I believe at the time when I was first when I first joined Masonry back in the 80s, I think you still had to be a officer, or maybe you was senior NCO. So I wasn't eligible. So I was like, okay. And I realized they've They've lowered the standards to let people like me in. So, but at this point, I've been in so many other things. I just never got around to joining. But I know several people. Brother Michael Johnstone, several of us know from. He just recently joined our research lodge, and he's very active in the Scottish Rite and other Masonic things. He's on the Hero of 76 team. Those are the guys who wear the colonial uniforms and present the flag, and they're often called on with the Grand Master's visit. They'll present the flag, and Michael does the flag talk that most of you may have heard, where it's like that wonderful flag. Michael recites that from memory. He does a great job. So yeah, I'm quite familiar with the Sojourners. Know several brothers who have been active in that through the years. Definitely a good organization.
It is, and for the sake of everyone here, so at one point in time, it was an officer-only organization that changed several years ago, and then became senior non-com. But now anyone that has honorably served in any capacity and is a Master Mason in good standard or in good standing, excuse me, that is eligible for membership. I know there was some mention of Camp Lejeune, and we've got a couple of very active chapters there in North Carolina, but I'm in Indianapolis, but in pretty well travel about. But perhaps after this is done, you can certainly distribute all of my contact information, phone, everything else. I'll be happy to share information with anyone. Unlike what we have in some of the other Masonic bodies, where there are subgroups. This is a full Masonic body that's similar in because it's nationally governed. So it's similar to the governance of the shrine and so forth, and within reason. But we've kind of taken on a role as being true ambassadors for Freemasonry because of things within our mission that allow us to go into venues where typically Masonic organizations are not necessarily invited. So we get a chance to expose elements of the public to Freemasonry in a way that many times we're just not allowed. And it has helped at the local lodge level for us to be able to continue to expose the public to what real Freemasonry is, instead of some of the things that really reared their ugly head throughout COVID and so forth, when some people decided to share some of the, I guess, the rumor mill of us wanting to control the world wealth and all those things that just kind of came back to light. So I think we have a really important mission now, probably more important than it's been in a long, long time. I have been a sojourner as well as involved with a lot of the other Masonic bodies as well for about 30 years, and I'm finding with our society now, being able to have presentations like what we had today, where you can learn such good things that are not necessarily being taught anymore. And I think it's important that like today, that these things are shared where people actually understand our history. And that's a soapbox I could stay on for hours. So I'll quit talking. And
thank you, Brother Lewis. And if you want to put your contact info in the chat, you're more than welcome to. I wanted to point out to everybody, and I realize some of us are kind of newer to Zoom here, but if you click on the chat button at the bottom, there's ongoing stream. Most of you know how to use it. You had a few direct messages here, but some of our newer guys like Keith may not know it's there. But I do take the chat, and I post anything that's not strictly, some things I've taken out, but generally I take the chat and I'll post it on the Facebook group later, because it has contact info. Brother Steve Teeft had all of his info there in the chat. If people are interested, you want to take a look, he has a link for his Echoes Through Time website and so on. That's a good place to share a URL if you have a website you want people to be aware of. But I will make that available later in Facebook. Any other questions for Steve about the presentation?
I'm curious about something here. I know I've read where George Washington really encouraged Masonry within the Army because he believed it built better camaraderie amongst troops. It also said in a short talk bulletin that he really didn't give Lafayette a serious command until after he was raised the Master Mason. And at that point, maybe he had built his trust in him. Is there evidence that Freemasonry, because of these bonds, created more heroism and, you know, bold defenses or things like that amongst the soldiers who all, or sailors, Marines that were also Freemasons?
I think so. I think it made a big difference with his leadership. It's having that bond and that connection with their fellows just enhanced his what's the word I'm looking for? His not just a connection with his officers and soldiers alike. It really bonded them together because they had a greater purpose, knowing that one, that they would probably be more in fear of letting their fellows down than just not having that association with the craft. That's my opinion. But I think that it really, I hate to use this term, brick and mortar, it really formed a bond between Washington and his generalship, as well as his soldiers, were that they probably overperformed. I just had a conversation yesterday about the capturing of Major Andre just yesterday afternoon, and having being that Major Andre was captured out of uniform, and he had written a letter or correspondence to Washington saying that he's not pleading for his life. He is pleading for a soldier's death by execution, being a firing squad. And Washington, I believe Andre sent a letter to General Clinton, his superior, as well as Washington with this. And Washington's reply was, if you hand over Benedict Arnold, he will hang in your stead, because he was after Arnold. And since that they couldn't produce Benedict Arnold, Andre was hanged. And it was, even though that they were both Masons, they I'm sure had a different approach to things, but they were still soldiers and they did what they needed to do. And his men, Washington's men, had really performed because of his background, not just because he was a Freemason per se, but just because he took his leadership and he led men, not just taking people by the hand and coddling them as we see so much today. He led men, and that is so untypical of certain officership, in my opinion. He directed and people followed him, and he had such a different bond opposed to many other leaders in our country. So that's just my take on things. I hope that answered it a little bit.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question?
Just a simple one. And one of the things that frequently comes up on military lodges, and it's just, I don't know if anybody here has heard, is that James Monroe, we know that he was initiated at Williamsburg, but is generally assumed that he got his later degrees in a military lodge. I don't know if anyone had ever heard one way or the other on that.
I don't have any info on that.
Brother Chris, I know this maybe isn't the right subject to bring this up, but with all the news going on with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I saw online there is a Grand Lodge of Ukraine. I'm wondering how our brothers are doing there. The Ukrainian president actually said all 18 to 6-year-olds need to stay and fight. Anybody heard anything from the Grand Lodge of Ukraine or any of our lodges there and how they're doing?
Brian?
I've got some contacts in Poland. As you know, Poland is right next door to Ukraine. At the moment, Poland have invited the Ukrainian Grand Lodge to pass all their materials to them for safekeeping, in case it should get bombed, their Grand Lodge should be bombed or whatever. You're right. Any sort of adult male is being expected now to stay behind, although some are coming across the border, both in Poland and in the other surrounding countries.
Thanks.
I wanted to mention our next meeting is going to be Saturday, March 12th at 10 a.m. as always. Brother Jonathan Oliveris, who is with us today, he hasn't come off on camera yet, but Jonathan's here, so he's waving to you in the black there. He will be speaking on how his topic is COVID-19 and its impact on the craft. He was speaking about how this pandemic has affected Masonry over the last 2 years. So he's gathered together some data on that. I'm sure we all can say, yes, we've been affected, but he's actually gathered some pertinent information, some stats and such to share with us on that. So that should be most interesting. I would say COVID has brought about Zoom meetings like this. So this has given a lot of us a chance to get together when we weren't allowed to otherwise. That's why I call this an unstated meeting. It was a bit of a joke because we can't have our stated meeting when we wanted to. So I said, well, we'll have an unstated meeting. So it's unstated, the fact that we're not allowed to meet. So that's the running gag. So I'm still going with it. I've seen other people copy me. I was the one who came up with that term. I just want you to know I was the one who came up with unstated meetings. After that, March 26th, and I always love February and March when it's not a leap year, because if Saturday is the 26th in February, it'll be the 26th in March. Will be a Saturday as well. So it's easy to remember those 28 days. Makes it easy to tell you what the day of the month is the next month, because they line up nicely. But March 26th at 10 a.m. will be, I don't have a fancy title. I'm still working on one. The working title is Research Lodges Across Virginia. I have been asked by the Grand Lodge to write an article on all of our research lodges in Virginia. And what I decided to do was to kill multiple birds with the same stone. I'm going to have an unstated meeting on March 26th. I'm putting together a panel of at least 2 members of each of our research lodges. We have 5 of them. And we're also going to have our district deputies, past and present, for the research district. We recently changed things in Virginia. The Grand Master decided, rather than have a research lodge fall under its own district, in the city of Richmond, like where we are, it made more sense to have one district deputy to cover the whole state for all of the research lodges, however they may be. Currently, there's 5. So he will go and visit us individually, and it's a way of helping bring the research lodges in closer contact with each other, and to allow the Grand Lodge to have more input and kind of examine how research lodges operate. Those of you in states that have district deputies that have official visits and all, you know that you have to, the district deputy comes and visits you and talks about the Grand Master's plan. His job is to come early in your year, roll out for you what the Grand Master has going on, and basically to do sort of an inspection of each of the districts. And he's the conduit from the Grand Master directed to each lodge. Well, the research lodges operate differently. We don't we don't raise candidates. We don't do a lot of things a regular Blue Lodge does. So it made sense to me to have a district deputy specific for research lodges, because we have different needs and we don't have to do the things that the regular Blue Lodges do. So they're both going to be there to talk about their experiences, how things are changing. But it's going to be neat because we're going to delve into how each of our research lodges are unique. They all have their own purpose, their own trend of what sort of things they're researching, their own history. So that should be a lot of fun. That's going to be March 26th. So those are the next two meetings coming up. Should be a lot of fun. I hope you all can attend. It's only 11:30, so technically this is early for us.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. When I started this, we literally had some meetings where just the presentation alone was over an hour and nobody was bored. So we just kept going, but it makes for like a 2-hour video on YouTube. I don't know how many people are watching these on YouTube, honestly, because it seems like, I don't know, sitting through the meeting is a lot of fun and you enjoy it. I don't know how many people want to go and watch all of us attending. You know what I mean? They may tune in just for the paper, but I don't know. It's something we're exploring is what, what format works best. I like it being on YouTube. People always want to go back if they have to leave early. They want to catch the tail end of your talk, but I'm trying to come up with alternative ways, maybe cutting pieces of this out like I'm going to do with that question and answer session and have some shorter things on YouTube. I may get to a point where I ask our speakers to have shorter presentations, make it be like 20 minutes tops, so we can have a shorter meeting on YouTube to attract more viewers. I don't know. It's all up in the air. We're like I always say, I'm just making this up as I go along, and I figure you all will hopefully tell me, yes, I like that, no, I don't. The more feedback from you all, the better. Tell me if you really liked something. Tell me if you really hated something. Don't do it again. I want to make this a growing thing where it grows over time. We get more and more people involved, and I'm meeting the needs of everybody out there, and we're creating our own sacred space here.
Brother Chris, I've always tried to keep my talks really brief because sometimes you kind of lose people's attention. So I always try to go and try to give a little shorter, brief synopsis of what the topic is. Not that people aren't interested. It's just that people don't want a drawn out lecture. They want a basic history of something, and it's just like the stories that I create. I try to do the short bios. If you want to learn about that person, look it up. Grab a book or something. I'm just trying to present a little snippet of history for somebody's entertainment and enjoyment to spread the light. So to me, keeping it on the shorter side is a good thing. And if they want a full-blown lecture, we can get to the nitty-gritty. So,
if it's a good topic, we'll break it up into multiple sessions, I think is better. I think if you're in the lodge presenting a paper, if you talk more than 15, 20 minutes, you're going to start losing people. I've only had a few where I've given one that's over a half hour long. Everybody was interested, but it's much easier in a lodge to realize that you're losing people, and the fact that you're standing the whole time, you kind of get the vibe that, okay, I need to wrap it up. It's much easier in an online session like this to just kind of go off. I've had brothers who had short talks when they came in and they kind of went off on a tangent, and I let them because it was interesting. They're like, well, let me expand on this a bit. And I've been known to do that too. So I think this encourages a longer talk. But I do like the fact that we have a lot of Q&A. And I've noticed some of our research meetings and just presenting to a lodge, I almost never get questions. Lodges aren't used to talking back to a speaker. The guy comes in and talks, everybody applauds, and then you go home. Research Lodge, we want to encourage the Q&A and draw out more information and share more experiences. I think you get more out of it with more of a Q&A, and I do think the Zoom meetings encourage that. Brother Lewis, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just got a comment with regard to the YouTube postings. Many times I have a conflict on Saturday where I'm unable to attend live. I really appreciate the topics are interesting. I want to see them, but I'm always afraid that I'll miss. And the YouTube postings are great. It gives us a chance to revisit, and sometimes multiple times, because your presenters tend to give a lot of information. And so That's my comment with regard to that. I hope we continue, especially becoming, a different jurisdiction, and it gives me a lot of perspective on other things. So I certainly appreciate it.
All right then. All right. Well, then we'll keep. I mean, I don't plan to stop doing it. I'm just trying to think of. There will be people like yourself who will watch all 2 hours of it. God bless you. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I try not to edit them too much. I cut out a little bit at the beginning and occasionally a little bit at the end. If it kind of the topic, if we just kind of die off and I'm asking several times, are there any more questions? I may cut that off if there's nothing going on. But generally, I run the whole thing. I don't spend a lot of time editing. If I was more skilled at editing, maybe if I was getting paid to do this, I'd go in and cut out the silences and trim it up. But honestly, it's just a one-man show here. So for most of this, so I don't have to edit it much, and I get it up and running, and people are happy with that. So, but I want to look at ways of having shorter ones that I can publish separate from that are like 15, 20 minutes that may draw in more people. So that's what I'm going to be looking to do, is having more segments in here. Brother Joyner?
Yeah, two things. One, I know we surely missed you at the last research lodge here in Richmond, but the speaker, Worshipful Mendez from Manasseh Lodge, did a lot of interactive, like you said, as a guest speaker, and which was truly understanding what esotericism means in Masonry. But and he did a great job of bringing everybody that was there in and interacting. So that's a great example of what you're talking about there. Secondly, and I think from my experiences here at Research Lodge contributed to this, I got to speak to a middle school class this week on Edgar Allan Poe. And as you know, I'm doing some research on Poe and his interactions with Masonry. So that benefited me a lot from being able to speak to these kids about Poe. And where I'm at right now, I'm still researching, getting some other areas. But if you're interested, I may just go with what I've got and talk about that. Maybe October will be an appropriate month for that.
Indeed. Very good. Thank you. And yes, if any of you here, and I think I've started to get regular, so you're probably hearing me more than once say the same thing. I'm sorry, but I never have there's always more people at each meeting that haven't been there before. So if you hear me say the same thing more than once, well, get used to it, because I want to reach everybody. But if anybody here is interested in being a speaker for one of these unstated, I certainly encourage you. If by chance you are interested in Masonic education, you've wanted to give a talk, maybe you haven't given one in your lodge, you don't feel comfortable standing up in your lodge yet, you're kind of new to this public speaking game, this is a much easier, much more low bar format for you to come in and talk, because you get to sit at home and just talk. So if you want to prepare a paper for the first time and deliver it, I encourage you. I will certainly give you a forum to give a Masonic talk here. So that's just an open invitation. And if you're a long-term speaker like myself, well, you're welcome too. But I'm just saying, I see it as, I know it's intimidating the first time to get up and speak in front of your lodge. It's not ritual. You can memorize a part, and once you're confident that you memorized it, you'll stand up and do the ritual. That's a different level, and it's not as hard, I think, once you learn the part. But getting up and speaking your own words is intimidating to some people. So I offer that opportunity for someone who wants to polish. Maybe you have a paper you want to give in your lodge and you want to practice it on us. I don't mind at all, because somebody will enjoy it, and it's a different audience that's going to hear it in your lodge. So please, if you're ever interested in being a speaker, or if you know someone who you think would be a good speaker, please refer them to me, and we'd be happy to schedule you, because I'm planning to do one of these every 2 weeks for the foreseeable future. That seems to work out better than weekly. I don't think I can manage getting enough speakers to do this weekly right now. So we're going to stick with the every other week for now, and we seem to be getting a good crowd. So Brother Guzman left and came back. Oh, and Brother Rob, good to have you join us late. I saw you came in here. I tried to say hello to people when they came in during the talk. There's only a couple people. Anybody else have anything else to offer? All right, we have a worship master here. Rooster, good to have you here. You should know, Rooster, we had 8 members of Virginia Research Lodge attend this Zoom meeting. That's a high watermark there. That's very good. We got our former, we won't let him leave yet, secretary, came to his first meeting. We got Bernie here, our past Grand Master who attended. We have our junior warden, our senior warden, and our worshipful master are all here. So we're on a good trend here. I've always complained a little bit to my dear brothers in Virginia Research. It's like, look, this has got your name on it, and I'm the only one showing up. I'm starting to look bad. So I appreciate y'all coming out. I really do. It's great to see more of you here. I'm trying. I appreciate the fact that I'm able to reach through Brian and Brother Hughes, who's left, and Brother Aday. I have brothers from all over the world who tune in regularly, and it's great. I have an international audience for this little show, and it's really nice. But I wanted to use this. One of the many things I want to do is to reach more Masons out there with Masonic education, let people know about research lodges, specifically ours, and encourage members of our own research lodge to get on here and participate. So we're moving in the right direction, and it's great. But the more members of my actual research lodge on here, the better. I think once you start coming, I think you're going to keep coming because you see the benefit of it, and tell the others. Let the others know. So, Rooster, you have anything to say on behalf of the lodge here? You're muted. I can't hear you. There you are. Nope. We're having audio problems. You're not muted. It's something with your mic. Nope. All right. Well, that was Rooster. That's our worship master. I cannot hear you, sir. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, Brother Robert, good to have you here, our senior warden. Good to have both my bosses here ahead of me here. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up unless anybody else has anything to offer. Thank you again, Brother Teeft. That was a very interesting talk. It was great. It's a topic we hadn't covered yet. I like this. We're always trying to find new topics about Masonry that are interesting. I think everyone enjoyed it. Okay. Thank you very much for attending. I mentioned our upcoming meetings. I hope you all can continue to attend. It's going to be every 2 weeks on Saturday at 10 a.m. We've only had one exception, and that was because we had an observant Jew who wanted to give a talk on Jewish alchemy. So we met on a Sunday because it wasn't his Sabbath. But that was the exception. Typically, we're meeting on Saturdays at 10. So we'll plan to continue to do that. This will be up on YouTube, and check out our Facebook group. The links are in there. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate y'all coming out. Y'all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you all soon.